I never thought I'd be the kind of person who checks their husband's bank statements. But here I was, sitting in my lawyer's office, staring at documents that proved what I had suspected all along. My husband's noble sacrifice of selling my car for his mother's medical treatment was nothing but an elaborate lie. Let me take you back to where it all began. 3 months ago, I was driving my beloved Honda Civic, a car I had purchased with my own savings from years of working as a middle school teacher. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, paid in full, and represented my independence. That Friday afternoon, I returned home from grocery shopping to find Gary, my husband of 8 years, sitting at our kitchen table with an unusual expression on his face. "Bella, we need to talk," he said, his voice carrying that forced calmness I'd come to recognize as a precursor to bad news. "Mom's condition has worsened. The doctors say she needs an experimental treatment, and insurance won't cover it." I felt my heart sink. Imogen, my mother-in-law, had been battling an autoimmune condition for the past year. While we weren't particularly close, I cared about her well-being. She was family, after all. What came next, however, I wasn't prepared for. "I've found a buyer for your car," Gary announced, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "He's offering a good price, and it's exactly what we need for Mom's treatment." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "My car? But Gary, I need it for work. The school is across town, and you know how unreliable the bus service is in our area." He reached across the table, taking my hand in what I now recognize was a manipulative gesture. "Honey, this is my mother we're talking about. Her life is at stake. You can take the bus for a while, right? It's just temporary until we figure something out." The way he framed it made me feel selfish for even hesitating. How could I prioritize my convenience over someone's life? So, I agreed, telling myself it was the right thing to do. The next day, I watched as a stranger drove away in my car, leaving me with a hollow feeling in my stomach that I tried to ignore. The first few weeks were challenging. I had to wake up 2 hours earlier to catch the bus to school. Some days, when the bus was late or didn't show up at all, I had to spend money on rideshare services. Gary was sympathetic at first, offering to drive me occasionally, but that quickly faded. "You're managing fine," he'd say, "and it's for a good cause." But something felt off. Imogen never mentioned the treatment during our weekly family dinners. When I casually brought it up, she seemed confused, talking instead about her regular medication. Gary would quickly change the subject, and I noticed how he'd become agitated whenever I asked about the treatment's progress. One rainy evening, after missing the bus and having to walk home in a downpour, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I checked our joint bank account's detailed statement. The money from my car's sale had been withdrawn the same day it was deposited, but there were no payments to any medical facility. Instead, I found a series of transfers to an account I didn't recognize. That's when I made the call to Amanda Porter, a lawyer recommended by my colleague who had gone through a similar situation. "Bring me everything you can," she said. "Bank statements, text messages, emails, anything related to the car sale and the supposed medical treatment." As I sit here now, looking at the evidence Amanda has compiled, I feel a mix of anger, betrayal, and, surprisingly, relief. The bank transfers led to a cryptocurrency trading account Gary had opened months ago. There was no experimental treatment, no urgent medical needs, just my husband gambling away my independence in the crypto market. Amanda looks at me with understanding eyes. "Bella, what do you want to do next?" I take a deep breath, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. The next steps I take will change everything, but I'm done being the understanding wife who sacrifices her needs for lies. The question is, how far does this deception go? And what else will I uncover as I start digging deeper? The rain continues to pour outside the office window, matching my mood, but somewhere inside me, a spark of determination ignites. This isn't just about a car anymore. It's about taking back control of my life, one truth at a time. The drive home from Amanda's office in her sleek sedan made me acutely aware of what I'd lost. Not just my car, but my trust in the man I'd shared my life with for 8 years. As she dropped me off, she handed me her card with her personal number scribbled on the back. "Call me anytime," she said. even if you just need to talk. That night, I couldn't sleep. Gary was working late again, something that had become increasingly common over the past few months. With trembling hands, I did something I'd been avoiding. I opened his laptop. We had always known each other's passwords, a symbol of trust in our marriage. How ironic that I would use this trust to uncover his betrayal. His email revealed a world I never knew existed. There were dozens of messages from cryptocurrency trading platforms, investment groups, and what appeared to be online gambling sites. The dates went back further than the sale of my car, much further. 6 months of secret transactions, hidden accounts, and desperate attempts to recover losses. But what made my stomach turn wasn't the gambling. It was an email thread with his mother, dated just 2 weeks ago. "Gary, I don't understand why Bella sold her car. Is everything okay with you two? You know you can talk to me, right? And what's this treatment you mentioned? My doctor hasn't said anything about experimental procedures." My mother-in-law wasn't just innocent in this scheme. She was completely unaware of it. Gary had used her illness as a shield, manipulating both of us. The realization made me physically sick. I printed everything, my teacher's instinct for documentation kicking in. As I organized the emails chronologically, a pattern emerged. Gary's first ventures into cryptocurrency trading had started small, a few $100s here and there. But as losses mounted, his desperation grew. The sale of my car wasn't the beginning. It was the culmination of months of poor decisions and cover-ups. The next morning, I called in sick to school, something I rarely did. Instead, I visited Imogen. She lived in a modest apartment across town, the same one she'd moved to after Gary's father passed away. When she opened the door, her face lit up, then quickly shifted to concern. "Bella, is everything all right? You look like you haven't slept." I hadn't planned what to say, but sitting in her small kitchen, clutching a cup of chamomile tea, the truth spilled out. Her face went through a range of emotions as I showed her the emails. Shock, anger, and finally, deep sadness. "Oh, Bella," she whispered, reaching for my hand. "I had no idea. This isn't the son I raised." That's when she told me something that made everything click. Gary's father hadn't just passed away. He had gambled away their life savings before his death, leaving Imogen to rebuild her life from scratch. History wasn't just repeating, it was evolving into something more insidious. "I should have seen the signs," Imogen said, her voice thick with emotion. The way he would get defensive about money, the secretive phone calls. I just didn't want to believe he could follow his father's path. As I left Imogen's apartment that afternoon, she hugged me tightly and slipped something into my hand, a small key. "This is to my safety deposit box at First National," she said. "There are documents there about Gary's father, things I've never shown anyone. Maybe they'll help you understand and protect yourself." On the bus ride home, I felt a strange mix of emotions. The betrayal had deepened, yet somehow I felt stronger. Imogen's support had given me something unexpected: clarity. This wasn't just about my car or the money anymore. It was about breaking a cycle of deception that spanned generations. My phone buzzed with a text from Gary. "Working late again tonight? Don't wait up." I typed back a simple, "Okay," knowing it would be one of the last normal exchanges we'd have. Tomorrow, I would visit that safety deposit box, and whatever I found there would determine my next steps. But one thing was certain: I was done being a passenger in my own life. The bus stopped at a red light, and through the window, I watched a young couple walking hand in hand, their faces lit with trust and hope. I remembered when Gary and I were like that. But as the light turned green and the bus moved forward, I realized something profound. Sometimes moving forward means leaving behind the person you thought you knew, even if that means walking alone for a while. Amanda's business card felt heavy in my pocket. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, but tonight, I had homework to do. I needed to understand exactly what Gary had done with the money from my car, and more importantly, I needed to plan my next moves carefully. Because if there's one thing teaching middle school had taught me, it's that you need to be prepared for anything, especially when dealing with someone who thinks they've gotten away with their lies. The safety deposit box felt heavier than it should have as I placed it on the private viewing table at First National Bank. My hands trembled slightly as I inserted the key Imogen had given me. Inside, I found a manila envelope, yellowed with age, with Gary Sr. written in faded ink across the top. I took a deep breath before opening it. The contents spilled out. Old bank statements, legal documents, and a handwritten letter that caught my eye immediately. It was dated 15 years ago, just months before Gary's father passed away. My dearest Imogen, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. The cancer isn't what's killing me. It's the shame. The house, our savings, the kids' college funds. I lost everything. The gambling consumed me. I couldn't stop even when I knew I was destroying our family. Don't let Gary know the full truth. Protect him from becoming like me. The letter continued, but I had to stop reading as tears blurred my vision. Not for Gary Sr., but for Imogen, who had carried this burden alone for so long. The other documents told an even grimmer story. Second mortgages, payday loans, emptied retirement accounts. The pattern was eerily similar to what I was uncovering about Gary now, but there was something else in the box. A small, leather-bound diary. Imogen's diary. The entries started right after her husband's death and continued for several years. As I read, my heart sank deeper. Gary found his father's gambling receipts today. He was so angry, swore he'd never be like him. But I saw something in his eyes that scared me. Not anger at the addiction, but at getting caught. I spent hours in that small viewing room, piecing together a family history of secrets and denial. By the time I left the bank, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Gary and a text. "Where are you? We need to talk about Mom's treatment progress." The irony of his message made me laugh bitterly. I typed back, "Stuck in traffic. Order takeout if you're hungry." Another lie to add to our collection. But this one felt different. It was a shield, not a weapon. That evening, I met with Amanda at a small cafe far from our neighborhood. The documents from the safety deposit box spread out between us. She took careful notes while I sipped chamomile tea, trying to calm my nerves. "This is gold," Amanda said, pointing to a particular bank statement. "See this pattern? Gary Sr. used the same methods your husband is using now, moving money through multiple accounts to hide the trail. But he made mistakes, just like your Gary is making now." "What's my next move?" I asked, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. Amanda leaned back, studying me carefully. "You're a teacher, Bella. You know how to handle difficult situations with patience and strategy. We have evidence of financial fraud, but more importantly, we have a pattern. This isn't just about your car anymore. It's about protecting your future." She outlined a plan that made my breath catch. It was bold, perhaps even ruthless, but it was necessary. We would document everything, build an irrefutable case, and then— "The key," Amanda explained, "is timing. We need to catch him in a lie so big he can't talk his way out of it. And I think I know exactly how to do it." As she detailed the next steps, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The same calm I feel in my classroom when I know exactly how to handle a difficult situation. Years of teaching had taught me that sometimes the most important lessons come from facing uncomfortable truths. That night, as I lay in bed next to Gary, listening to his steady breathing, I thought about all the nights I'd spent worrying about being a good wife, about making sacrifices for our marriage. Now I was planning something that would change everything. The old Bella would have felt guilty, but this new version of me, the one emerging from the ashes of betrayal, felt only determination. My phone lit up with a text from Imogen. "Found more documents. Meet tomorrow?" I replied with a simple yes, then turned to look at my sleeping husband. He looked so peaceful, unaware that his carefully constructed world of lies was about to crumble. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, but tonight I allowed myself to mourn. Not for the marriage I was about to end, but for the woman I used to be, who trusted too easily and questioned too little. The ceiling fan spun slowly above our bed, casting rhythmic shadows. In less than 24 hours, I would set in motion a plan that would change both our lives forever. But first, I had one more place to visit, one more piece of evidence to gather. Because if teaching middle school had taught me anything, it was that the best lessons often come from unexpected places. And sometimes, the most important test isn't about what you know, but about what you're willing to do with that knowledge. The next morning, I walked into Riverside Middle School with a different kind of energy. My students noticed immediately. 13 years of teaching had taught me that kids pick up on everything. "Mrs. Harrison, you look different today," said Hazel, one of my most perceptive 8th graders. "Like you're about to give us a pop quiz or something." She wasn't entirely wrong. I was preparing for a test, just not the kind they were used to. During my free period, I made 2 important calls from the privacy of my classroom. The first was to our bank, requesting detailed statements for all our joint accounts going back 3 years. The second was to a private investigator Amanda had recommended. "Mrs. Harrison," the investigator's voice was professional and direct. "I understand your situation. We'll start tracking his movements today. If there are other accounts or regular meeting spots, we'll find them." I hung up just as my next class filed in, their chatter filling the room with familiar energy. As I taught them about literary devices in To Kill a Mockingbird, I couldn't help but appreciate the irony in my own life. How appearances can deceive, how justice sometimes requires careful planning, and how standing up for what's right isn't always easy. After school, I met Imogen at a small diner 2 towns over, far from any of Gary's usual haunts. She looked tired but determined as she slid a USB drive across the table. "I found his father's old computer in my storage unit," she said, stirring her coffee absently. "Gary doesn't know I kept it. There are emails on here, conversations between his father and his gambling buddies. The patterns, Bella, they're exactly the same." I touched the drive, feeling its weight in my hand. "Did you read them all?" Imogen nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "History's repeating itself, but this time, we're not going to let it destroy another family. I've already talked to my bank. I'm changing my will tomorrow." The implications of her words hit me hard. Imogen wasn't just helping me, she was taking a stand against her own son. The strength that must have required was staggering. Back home, I maintained our normal routine. Gary came home late again, full of excuses about work meetings. I served dinner, asked about his day, and listened to more lies about his mother's non-existent treatment. But now, every lie was another piece of evidence, carefully documented in the Notes app on my phone. "Honey," he said as we cleaned up dinner, "I think we should visit Mom this weekend, show her our support during her treatment." I nearly dropped the plate I was drying. The audacity of his suggestion made my blood boil, but years of handling classroom conflicts helped me maintain my composure. "That's a wonderful idea," I replied, watching his face carefully. "We could ask her doctor about the experimental treatment's progress." A flicker of panic crossed his features before he recovered. "Actually, maybe next weekend would be better. She's probably tired from today's session." That night, I received an email from the private investigator. Gary hadn't been at work late at all. He'd been at the Golden Palace Casino, 40 minutes away. Attached were photos of him entering and leaving, timestamp included. The investigator had also discovered 3 new bank accounts opened in the past month. I forwarded everything to Amanda, then sat in our home office, staring at the family photos on the wall. There we were, smiling on our honeymoon, at Christmas parties, at family gatherings. When had the man I married disappeared? Or had I just been blind to who he really was all along? My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "Everything's in place for tomorrow. Are you ready?" Was I ready? The question echoed in my mind as I prepared for bed. Tomorrow would be no ordinary Friday. Tomorrow I would begin the carefully choreographed dance that would either save my husband from himself or end our marriage. Possibly both. I had arranged for a substitute teacher for the afternoon. The private investigator had confirmed Gary's regular Friday casino visit. Imogen was prepared with her part of the plan. Amanda had all the legal documents ready. Even my students' assignments were prepared and organized. Because no matter what chaos my personal life was in, I wouldn't let it affect their education. As I lay in bed, listening to Gary's breathing beside me, I thought about the lessons I taught my students about character and courage. Tomorrow, I would put those lessons into practice in a way I never imagined. The old Bella would have been terrified, but this new version of me felt something different. A mix of sadness and determination that felt strangely like strength. My last thought before drifting off to sleep was of my car, not just as a vehicle, but as the catalyst that had forced me to open my eyes. Sometimes losing something valuable helps you realize what's truly precious: self-respect, truth, and the courage to face both. Friday morning arrived with an unusual stillness. I went through my morning routine mechanically: shower, coffee, professional attire. But today, instead of my usual teaching bag, I packed a folder containing everything Amanda and I had prepared. Gary had already left for work, or so he claimed in the note he'd left on the kitchen counter. My first stop wasn't the school. Instead, I drove Amanda's borrowed car to the Golden Palace Casino, arriving just as it opened. The security manager was expecting me. Amanda had arranged everything. In his office, he pulled up the surveillance footage I'd requested. "Mrs. Harrison, your husband's been here almost every Friday for the past 4 months," he explained, showing me footage of Gary at various tables. "He's what we call a high-risk player. We've had to escort him out twice when he became agitated after significant losses." I watched the screens, my throat tight. There was my husband, transforming from a composed professional into someone I barely recognized. Desperate, angry, reckless. The security manager slid a document across his desk. "This is his ban request form. He filled it out himself 3 weeks ago, asking us to block his entry. It's a common practice for gambling addicts trying to quit." But he was back the next day, using a different entrance. The revelation hit me hard. Gary had tried to stop. He'd recognized his problem, taken steps to address it, but couldn't break free. It made what I was about to do both harder and more necessary. By noon, everything was in place. Amanda sat with me in her office, reviewing our strategy one final time. "Remember," she said, "this isn't just about confronting him. It's about protecting yourself and, potentially, saving him from himself." I nodded, checking my phone. The private investigator had confirmed Gary's arrival at the casino 20 minutes ago, right on schedule. I sent a text to Imogen, who was waiting at her apartment with her part of the plan ready. At exactly 2:15 p.m., I walked into the Golden Palace Casino. The security manager nodded subtly as I passed, confirming Gary was still at his usual table. My heart pounded as I approached, my heels clicking against the marble floor. There he sat, my husband of 8 years, hunched over a poker table, his tie loosened and his face etched with tension. I stood behind him, watching as he placed another bet. The chips in front of him were dwindling. These weren't just chips, they were our future, my car, our trust, all being gambled away. The dealer looked up, saw me, and hesitated for just a moment. That's when Gary turned around. The color drained from his face. "Bella? What? What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at school. Just like you're supposed to be at work?" My voice was steady, calmer than I felt. "Or maybe you're here researching Mom's experimental treatment." He stood up so quickly his chair nearly toppled over. "Let's talk about this outside," he hissed, reaching for my arm. I stepped back, maintaining my distance. "No, Gary. We're going to talk about this right here." I opened my folder, pulling out the first document, his ban request form. "You tried to stop, didn't you? 3 weeks ago you knew you needed help. What happened?" His eyes darted between my face and the document, panic rising in his features. "How did you— This isn't what you think. I can explain everything." "Like you explained selling my car?" I kept my voice low but firm. "Or like you explained Mom's non-existent treatment." Other players were starting to notice our exchange. A security guard moved closer, but stayed back at the manager's signal. This was part of the plan. Public enough to prevent Gary from making a scene, private enough to maintain some dignity. "Your mother knows everything, Gary. She's at her apartment right now with all the documents from your father's gambling debts. History repeating itself, that's what she called it." He staggered slightly, gripping the edge of the table. "You talked to Mom? You went through my father's things?" "I did more than that. I pulled out more papers, bank statements, surveillance photos, email printouts. Every Friday afternoon for 4 months, every withdrawal, every lie about working late. It's all here." The chips lay forgotten on the table as Gary's carefully constructed world began to crumble. His face cycled through emotions: anger, shame, denial, fear. "Bella, please!" His voice cracked. "I was going to tell you. I just needed time to fix this. One more game, one big win." "That's exactly what your father said," I replied softly. "Right up until the end." A casino supervisor approached, gesturing discreetly toward the exit. I nodded, then turned back to my husband. "You have two choices right now, Gary. You can come with me to Amanda's office where we'll discuss terms for moving forward, including addiction treatment and financial transparency, or..." I let the sentence hang there, watching as the implications sank in. This was the moment everything hinged on. Would he choose help, or would he run? The Gary I married, the man I thought I knew, seemed to surface briefly in his eyes. "What's at Amanda's office?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The truth. All of it. And maybe a way forward, if you're willing to take it." He looked down at the chips, then at the papers in my hand, and finally at me. The next words out of his mouth would determine not just our future, but his own salvation or destruction. The casino lights flickered overhead, casting shifting shadows across his face as he made the most important bet of his life. "I need a minute," Gary said, his voice shaking. He stepped away from the table, leaving his chips behind, a small fortune in colored plastic that represented so many lies. The casino supervisor efficiently cleared his spot, a wordless indication that his gambling session was over, one way or another. I watched as Gary paced a small circle, running his hands through his hair, a nervous habit I'd seen countless times during our marriage, but never understood its true significance until now. Finally, he stopped and turned to me, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "You said Mom's at her apartment?" he asked, his voice barely audible above the casino's ambient noise. "Yes, with Amanda's colleague. They're waiting for us." I kept my distance, unsure if his apparent calm would last. Years of teaching had taught me that the quietest moments often preceded the biggest storms. "I can't face her," he whispered. "Not like this. Not knowing that she knows." His voice trailed off, and for a moment, I saw not my husband, but a scared little boy, terrified of disappointing his mother. "She already knows everything, Gary. She's known for weeks. What she doesn't know is what you're going to do about it now." The security manager appeared beside us, professional but firm. "Mr. Harrison, Mrs. Harrison, we have a private room available if you'd like to continue your conversation there." Gary looked at the exit, then at me, then at the poker table where he'd lost so much more than money. I could see the battle raging behind his eyes, the addiction pulling him back to the table, shame pushing him toward the door, and fear keeping him frozen in place. "I thought I could beat it," he said suddenly, words rushing out like a confession. "Dad lost everything because he was weak. That's what I always told myself. I was smarter, more controlled. I had a system." He laughed bitterly. "I even won at first. Big wins. It felt amazing, like I was proving something. Then I started losing, and all I could think about was getting back to that feeling." We followed the security manager to a small conference room, away from the noise and lights of the casino floor. As soon as the door closed behind us, Gary seemed to deflate, sinking into a chair. "The car money," I prompted gently. "Where did it really go?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "I lost most of it the same day. I was so sure I could double it, maybe even triple it. Pay you back before you even noticed. Get Mom the best care possible." He trailed off, the lie about his mother's treatment hanging heavy between us. "And the rest? Cryptocurrency trading. Another sure thing." His laugh was hollow. "I've lost everything, haven't I? Not just the money, but..." He gestured vaguely between us. I sat across from him, maintaining enough distance to feel safe, but close enough to talk quietly. "Not everything. Not yet. But what happens next depends entirely on you." I pulled out my phone and played a video Imogen had recorded yesterday. Gary's face crumpled as his mother's voice filled the room. "Son, I'm not angry. I'm heartbroken. Your father's addiction destroyed him because he chose his pride over getting help. You still have a choice." Tears rolled down his cheeks as the video ended. "I tried to stop," he whispered. "That ban form. I really tried. But they let me in anyway when I begged. Said it was my choice to make. And now? He wiped his face with shaking hands. "I need help," he admitted, the words seeming to physically pain him. "But I don't know if I can face Mom, or if you could ever trust me again, or—" "One step at a time," I interrupted, channeling my teacher's voice, firm but supportive. "Amanda has the paperwork for a treatment program. Your mother has agreed to help with the cost, but with conditions. Very strict conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "Complete financial transparency, joint accounts managed by a trust, regular therapy, both addiction counseling and couples counseling, if—" I paused, the words sticking in my throat. "If we decide to try to save our marriage." Gary looked up sharply. "If? You broke something fundamental, Gary. Trust isn't like your poker chips. You can't just win it back with one big play. It has to be rebuilt slowly, deliberately, with complete honesty." The security manager knocked softly, then entered. "Mr. Harrison, Mrs. Harrison, whenever you're ready, your lawyer called. She's expecting you at her office." Gary stood slowly, looking more exhausted than I'd ever seen him. "What if I fail again?" he asked, vulnerability raw in his voice. I gathered my documents, choosing my words carefully. "Then you'll fail knowing you tried, with support, instead of failing alone with lies." I headed toward the door, then turned back. "But first, you need to face your mother and tell her everything yourself. No more secrets. No more protecting anyone from the truth." As we walked out of the casino into the harsh afternoon sunlight, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, fear, and somewhere underneath it all, a tiny spark of hope. Not for our marriage, not yet, but for the possibility of healing, even if that healing meant walking different paths. The drive to Amanda's office stretched before us, heavy with unspoken words and uncertain futures. But for the first time in months, we were both walking in truth, however painful that truth might be. Amanda's office felt smaller with all four of us in it. Imogen sat straight-backed in her chair, her hands folded neatly in her lap, but I could see them trembling slightly. Gary couldn't look at her, his gaze fixed on the carpet as if it held the answers to questions he couldn't voice. The silence was deafening until Amanda cleared her throat. "Let's start with the facts," she said, spreading documents across her desk. "Gary, in the past 4 months, you've lost approximately $89,000 through gambling and cryptocurrency trading. This includes the $15,000 from Bella's car sale, $42,000 from your joint savings, and $32,000 in high-interest loans taken out in your name." Each number hit like a physical blow. I watched Imogen's face pale, but she remained composed. Gary seemed to shrink further into himself with each revelation. "Before we discuss the legal aspects," Amanda continued, "Imogen has something she'd like to share." My mother-in-law opened her purse and pulled out a worn envelope. "Gary," her voice was gentle but firm, "this is the last letter your father wrote me. I've never shown it to anyone else." She held it out, and after a long moment, Gary took it with trembling hands. As he read, tears began falling onto the paper. I could see the exact moment he reached the part about his father's shame, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Imogen moved to touch his arm, but hesitated, her hand hanging in the air between them. "Mom," Gary's voice cracked, "I'm so sorry. I became everything I swore I'd never be." "No," Imogen's response was quick and sharp. "You're not your father, Gary. You're here, facing this. That's more than he ever did." Amanda gave them a moment before continuing. "We have several matters to address. First, the treatment program." She slid a brochure across the desk. "It's a 12-week intensive program, followed by ongoing outpatient therapy. Imogen has offered to cover the cost, with conditions." Imogen straightened in her chair. "I'm selling my rental property to pay for this, Gary. But you'll sign an agreement. If you leave the program early or return to gambling, you'll be required to repay every penny." "The second matter," Amanda continued, "is financial rehabilitation. We've drafted a plan to consolidate your debts and create a structured repayment schedule. All your accounts will be jointly monitored by a financial advisor and trustee." Gary nodded numbly, still clutching his father's letter. "And us?" He glanced at me for the first time since we'd entered the office. I took a deep breath. I'm not making any decisions about our marriage until after you complete the program. My voice was steadier than I felt. Right now, you need to focus on getting help. I need time to... I paused, searching for the right words. To heal, Imogen finished for me. You both do. Amanda pulled out another document. We've prepared a temporary separation agreement. Bella will stay in the house, as her teaching salary is currently the only stable income. Gary, your mother has offered you the guest room during treatment. I can't stay in that apartment, Gary protested weakly. Dad's ghost is everywhere. Maybe that's exactly why you should, Imogen replied. Face those ghosts instead of running from them. Break this cycle once and for all. As Amanda walked us through the paperwork, I felt an unexpected wave of compassion. Not just for Gary, but for all of us, caught in this web of generational trauma and addiction. Imogen, who'd lived through this nightmare twice now. Gary, fighting demons he'd inherited without choosing. And me, learning that sometimes love means stepping back to let someone face their battles. One last thing, Amanda said, pulling out a final document. Bella, the insurance payment for your car will be deposited into a separate account in your name only. I suggest using it to purchase a new vehicle, one that represents your independence going forward. For some reason, this small detail, the promise of a new car, bought with clean money, made everything feel real. Tears sprang to my eyes as I signed the papers, each signature a step toward an uncertain future. As we prepared to leave, Gary turned to me. I'll make this right, he whispered. Somehow, I'll find a way to make it right. I looked at him, really looked at him, seeing both the man I'd married and the broken person he'd become. Don't make promises right now, I said gently. Just focus on getting better. That's the only way anything can ever be right again. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Imogen and Gary left together, him following her like a chastened child. I watched them go, feeling both lighter and heavier, freed from the weight of secrets, but burdened by the weight of what came next. Amanda touched my arm. You did the right thing today. All of you did. I nodded, unable to speak. Sometimes doing the right thing feels exactly like breaking your own heart. The first night alone in our house, my house now, technically, was surreal. The silence felt both oppressive and liberating. I walked from room to room, really seeing our shared space for the first time in months. Little signs of Gary's addiction were everywhere once I knew to look. Hidden receipts stuck between books, a drawer full of casino loyalty cards, browser histories of gambling sites carefully deleted but leaving traces in suggested URLs. My phone buzzed with a text from Imogen. He settled in, started talking about his father, first time in years. Thank you for being strong enough to make this happen. I sat on my bed, fingers hovering over the keyboard, unsure how to respond. Finally, I wrote, "Take care of yourself too. This isn't just his journey." The next morning, I woke up early, my teacher's internal clock immune to personal chaos. But instead of rushing to catch the bus, I took my time getting ready. Amanda had arranged for the insurance money to be deposited immediately, and I had an appointment at a car dealership. Something practical but reliable, I told the saleswoman Lisa, who'd been recommended by Amanda. And most importantly, something that's just mine. She showed me several options, never pushing, seeming to understand that this purchase was about more than transportation. I finally settled on a blue Subaru Outback. Nothing flashy, but solid and dependable, with enough space for camping gear. I'd always wanted to try camping, but Gary had dismissed it as sleeping in dirt. You know, Lisa said as we finished the paperwork, most women who come in after situations like yours go for something completely different from their old car. It's like marking a new chapter. I looked at her curiously. Does Amanda send you a lot of clients? She smiled knowingly. Let's just say I understand the importance of having something that's truly yours. That afternoon, I drove my new car to school, arriving early enough to sit in the parking lot and just breathe. The familiar sight of the building grounded me. Here, at least, I knew exactly who I was and what I was doing. Hazel, my perceptive 8th grader, noticed the change immediately. Nice car, Mrs. Harrison. And you look different. like you found something you lost. Kids have an uncanny way of cutting through to truth. I had found something, myself. The next few weeks fell into a new rhythm. During the day, I taught my classes with renewed energy, finding unexpected parallels between the literature we studied and my own life. The Giver sparked particularly intense discussions about the weight of carrying painful knowledge and whether ignorance truly could be bliss. In the evenings, I started reclaiming my space. I cleaned out Gary's home office, boxing up his things for Imogen to store. Under a stack of papers, I found an old photo album from our first year of marriage. I sat on the floor, flipping through images of happier times, allowing myself to mourn not just what I'd lost, but what I'd thought I had. Imogen kept me updated on Gary's progress in treatment. "He's doing the work," she'd text. "Really doing it. His counselor says he's finally talking about his father's death, how it affected him." I appreciated her updates but maintained my distance. The program recommended no contact for the first month, giving both the addict and their family time to focus on individual healing. I used that time well. I joined a support group for families affected by gambling addiction, meeting every Wednesday in a church basement. The stories I heard there helped me understand that my experience, while painful, wasn't unique. Many of these people had lost homes, retirement savings, children's college funds. Some had rebuilt their marriages. Others had found happiness alone. All of them had survived. One evening, about 3 weeks after Gary entered treatment, I was grading papers when my doorbell rang. It was Lisa, the car saleswoman. "I hope this isn't inappropriate," she said, holding up a bottle of wine. "But Amanda mentioned you might need a friend who understands, someone outside the situation." We sat on my back porch, sharing the wine and our stories. Hers involved a husband who'd hidden a gambling addiction for 12 years before emptying their children's college accounts. "The hardest part," she said, "wasn't losing the money. It was realizing that every memory I had was now questioned. Was he actually at that business dinner 5 years ago? Was he really working late all those nights?" I understood completely. Every happy memory with Gary now came with an asterisk. Was this before? Was he hiding it then? Had any of it been real? "You know what helped me move forward?" Lisa asked, pouring the last of the wine. "Realizing that my memories were still mine. His actions didn't invalidate my feelings or who I was in those moments. They just meant I had to decide who I wanted to be in the moments to come." That night, after Lisa left, I sat down and wrote 2 letters. The first was to Gary, which I wouldn't send until his program allowed contact. It detailed everything I felt: the anger, the betrayal, the grief, but also hope for his recovery, separate from whatever happened to our marriage. The second letter was to myself, a promise to remain true to my own healing journey, regardless of what the future held. I sealed both letters and placed them in my new car's glove compartment, a reminder that I was in the driver's seat now, choosing my own direction. 6 months after that day in the casino, I sat in my car outside the Golden Palace, not to gamble or confront anyone, but to meet Gary for our first real conversation since he completed the treatment program. We'd chosen this location deliberately, facing demons head-on as his therapist suggested. I watched him approach in my rearview mirror. He looked different, healthier somehow. The haunted look in his eyes had been replaced by something steadier. He carried 2 paper cups from the coffee shop across the street. "I remembered you prefer tea," he said as he slid into the passenger seat of my new car. The space between us felt both familiar and strange. "Thank you," I replied, accepting the cup. "How does it feel being back here?" He looked at the casino's entrance, his expression thoughtful, like looking at a photograph of someone else's life. "I still feel the pull, I always will. But it's different now. I understand it better." We sat in silence for a moment, sipping our drinks. Through the windshield, we watched people entering and leaving the casino, some excited, others defeated, each one carrying their own story. "Mom showed me the deed yesterday," Gary said finally, "where she transferred the rental property into a trust for addiction treatment programs. She's turning her pain into purpose." I smiled, thinking of Imogen's transformation over these months. She'd become a fierce advocate for gambling addiction awareness, turning her rental property into a foundation that helped families affected by addiction. Her strength had inspired my own healing journey. Bella, Gary's voice was quiet but clear. I know we agreed to wait until I completed the program to discuss our future. I've had a lot of time to think about what I want to say. I turned slightly in my seat to face him. So have I. Let me go first, please, he requested. I've learned so much about myself, about Dad, about patterns I never even realized I was repeating. I understand now that what I did wasn't just about the gambling or the money. It was about trust, respect, and the fundamental promises we make when we choose to share our lives with someone. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I'm not asking for reconciliation. I don't have that right. What I want to say is thank you. Thank you for being strong enough to stop me when I couldn't stop myself. Thank you for involving Mom, for making me face everything in the light instead of hiding in shame like Dad did. You probably saved my life that day. Tears pricked at my eyes, but they were different from the ones I'd shed months ago. These weren't tears of betrayal or loss, but of recognition, of seeing clearly the path that had brought us here. I have something for you, I said, reaching into my glove compartment for the letter I'd written all those months ago. I wrote this the night you entered treatment. I think it's time you read it. As he read, I watched his face reflect the emotions I'd poured onto those pages. The pain, the anger, but also the hope for his healing, separate from our marriage. When he finished, he carefully folded the letter. You're teaching To Kill a Mockingbird again, he said, noticing the paperback on my back seat. Still your favorite unit? More relevant than ever, I replied. We just finished discussing Scout's realization about seeing things from other people's perspectives. One of my students said something interesting, that sometimes you have to lose what you thought you knew to understand what's real. Gary nodded slowly. Like father, like son, but maybe not anymore. I'm breaking that cycle. Thanks to you. You're breaking it yourself, I corrected gently. I just helped you see it was possible. We sat there a while longer, talking about his ongoing therapy, my new camping hobby. I'd just returned from my first solo trip, and Imogen's foundation work. The conversation was easier than I'd expected, but also clearly that of two people who had grown in different directions. Finally, Gary reached for the door handle. I've accepted a job offer in Denver, he said. Fresh start, away from old temptations. Plus, Mom thinks the foundation could expand there. I felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, but mostly peace. I think that's wise. I'll always love you, Bella, he said softly. But I think we both know that love isn't always enough, I finished. Sometimes the healthiest thing we can do is let go. He stepped out of the car, then leaned down for one last look. The blue suits you, he said, gesturing to my Subaru. It's very you. I watched him walk away, not toward the casino but toward the coffee shop where his mother waited. They had their own healing to continue, their own relationship to rebuild. Starting my car, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back at me was stronger than the one who'd first learned about her missing car, wiser than the one who'd confronted her husband in this very parking lot. She was someone who had learned that sometimes losing what you thought you needed leads you to find what you truly deserve. As I drove away from the Golden Palace for the last time, my phone buzzed with a message from Hazel, my perceptive student. Mrs. Harrison, can you help me with my college application essay? I'm writing about how people can surprise you with their strength when life gets hard. I smiled, thinking about all the lessons I'd learned and could now share. Sometimes the hardest storms in life don't destroy us, they reveal us, showing us who we really are and what we're capable of becoming. Turning onto the highway, I rolled down my windows, letting the spring air rush in. Ahead of me stretched an open road, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited about not knowing exactly where it would lead.